Hello. Here we are. If you're watching this, unless you're my friend David, hey David, you're probably watching a recording. Oh, people are coming on live. If you're watching the recording, well, first of all, if you're here live, let me know if you can hear me. I assume you can. If somebody wants to write in the chat that they can hear, okay, that'd be great. Or you can put a thumbs up on the screen. But yeah, if you're watching the recording, my name is Tim Grimes, and this is I gotta feel this is the first video of mine you've watched. But if for some reason it is, my name is Tim Grimes, and I thank you, David. You can hear me, excellent. And I talk about spirituality and manifesting concepts and relaxation. And in today's very special workshop, we're going to link those concepts together. That's right, folks. Today's workshop is kind of back to the fundamentals of what I like to talk to people about, coach people on, and write about in my books and guides, which is utilizing relaxation more in our daily lives. How we can inwardly feel more relaxed and have our life treat us better by doing so. This is such an important and key concept, in my opinion, when it comes to a lot of these manifesting ideas, law of attraction ideas, law of assumption ideas, whatever term we want to label it. Yet at the same time, it seems like relaxing is kind of glazed over, or not that many people pay attention to the importance of relaxation in their daily lives, particularly when it comes to manifesting practices. You know, people would rather focus on what they're supposed to affirm or visualize or vision board or journal, as opposed to just feeling relaxed. And in my opinion, the relaxation part is much, much, much more important than any specific technique you decide to utilize. All of these techniques are wonderful if they work well for you, but relaxation is often really the driving force that helps us get these techniques to work more effectively in our lives. So that's what we're going to cover today. I think that this group session is going to be good for people who are newer to this advice. And it's also going to be good for people who have been at this stuff for a long time and perhaps have been following the material I share for years, because it's always good to have reminders like this when it comes to things like relaxation. I know personally in my life, I'm always trying to remind myself to relax, even though I've just been speaking about it for years and try to incorporate it into my life as best I can. And I remember that story that I think W. Clement Stone told about Napoleon Hill, where W. Clement Stone, who partnered with Napoleon Hill, and they wrote a book together. But W. Clement Stone was with Napoleon Hill and saw Napoleon Hill was reading Think and Grow Rich, and W. Clement Stone was like, "Why are you reading that book that you wrote?" And Napoleon Hill was like, "Well, I'm trying to remember what I wrote in it, trying to remind myself of what I wrote." And even though I'm not a huge fan of Napoleon Hill, that's a great story. So what a nice place to start. And just real quick disclaimer here. If this is a group coaching session, I'm going to probably be speaking a lot at the beginning, and then I'm going to open it up. I might open it up periodically, but I'll certainly open it up at the latter part of this call for questions and conversation. Chatting in the group chat is encouraged at all times if you want to do that. But I love to speak to people, whether it's just via audio or audio and video. Just understand this is being recorded for YouTube and perhaps elsewhere. So if you want to be kept anonymous, you're probably going to want to change your name and use audio only if you decide to talk to me. In that case, you're probably going to be able to be kept anonymous. But if your name is on the screen, your full name, people are going to know who you are. If your face is on the screen, people might know who you are. So just keep that in mind. We usually, or dare I say it, I think always start these group calls by doing like a short grounding exercise that certainly makes sense today since we're going to be talking so much about relaxation. And finding different ways to ground ourselves is so important when it comes to relaxing. Relaxing, a sense of inner relaxation can happen when we're in the flow and physically moving around and being very active. But often we find we ground ourselves in very, you could say, traditional ways, such as sitting down or lying down or getting in a comfortable meditative position and just kind of being there. And that's what I'm going to do right now. And I assume you're going to be doing something similar. If you want, you can keep your eyes open or close them. And just, if you feel like it, just be here now, right? As Ram Dass said, I think, right? Just allow your body to sink into the comfort of wherever you're sitting or standing or lying down. Breathe, which you naturally are doing. Have your eyes open or closed. Relax your body physically. But here's the thing, here's the kicker. It's okay if your body doesn't really relax right now. It's totally fine. And likewise, it's okay if your mind is racing. It might be nice if your mind was nice and quiet and calm, and it might be nice if your body was very physically still and relaxed. But my point here is it doesn't matter. When we do a grounding exercise like this, or when we're trying to relax in general, this is not about being perfect. They're doing it the quote unquote right way. You can ground yourself and relax by just being less judgmental of your body and the thoughts going through your head. And that helps you relax, A really good way to just become more present is to not judgmentally look at what's going through your head or how your body feels for a few minutes. And just doing that and just kind of being here now, just doing that helps us relax. And I think this is the kind of thing that we all can pretty much do. Very not special, very not esoteric, very not complicated. Grounding yourself in this way does not have to be complicated at all. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You may be sitting here and thinking, well, nothing's happening. Good. Maybe something is happening. It's good too. Again, your body might feel weird. You might have very interesting thoughts. It's all good. If you like where your thoughts are leading you and you want to follow them because they're interesting to you, by all means, you can do that too. It's cool. Don't worry about it. You can move too. You don't have to be like a statue. So something like this is, a really easy way to feel more grounded. A couple minutes of this, I think you feel a little bit better. If you do this for like 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you might physically or even like your mind, like really might want to move or feel like you should be doing something, but still you can just do it. You can just still sit or lie down or whatever. You'll feel different afterwards probably because it grounds you. And this is the kind of thing you can make a practice. Do once a day, or maybe do it a couple times a day for a couple minutes or longer if you want, a couple times a day if you want, whatever. So that was the grounding. or meditation exercise or experience for the beginning of this session. Very simple. So, like I said, I kind of want to go back to just like one of the fundamental things that I like to discuss, which is relaxation, and linking it with just our daily life, stress management, our spiritual practices, and like, then our manifesting practices, if you want to call it that. A lot of the stuff I talk about is kind of bringing these very esoteric metaphysical ideas, especially as they pertain to like changing our outer reality, like down to earth, like down into our living room, right? From the high hills. And I think relaxation enables us to do that better, a lot better. I assume if you're on this call that you agree with me. I think probably everybody on this call agrees with me that our imagination plays a bigger role in our lives than is usually accepted by modern culture and society. That all these law of assumption, law of attraction ideas, or like the stuff that Emile Coué talks about, that there's something to them. I think everybody on this call is here for that reason. Like you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't believe in that stuff. You probably wouldn't know my channel. And I'm not the kind of person who says, well, you got to, imagine a certain way, or, there's a certain way to manifest things. I don't believe that. I always say you got to figure out what works for you. And it's a very subjective experience. But I do think that there is this underlying theme of feeling more inwardly at peace in the moment. You could say more relaxed. That helps us manifest better, basically. And, my argument, Lon, has been, even if you were not manifesting externally better, but just figured out a way to relax more inwardly and feel more at peace in the moment, and your external world didn't shift in any way, but internally you felt better, wouldn't it probably be a worthwhile practice in and of itself, just if that was the case, But I think most people on this call think that, well, if I feel more inwardly relaxed and am aware of these principles and perhaps implementing some of these LOA techniques I know about, then my external world will probably shift in some positive way as well. But, again, I want to remind you, even if it doesn't, and you just start putting more of a priority on feeling more at peace in your daily, day-to-day normal life, isn't that a good enough reason to do it? I think it is. And I think a lot of people on this call at least would agree with me, if not everybody. But from what I've seen, people tend to change their outer reality as well more effectively by being more inwardly relaxed and in flow, right? So today, I just want to go over really 3 main obvious points. Obvious Adams points, you may even say. Obvious Adams was an old business book. Some of you have probably heard of it. Did a podcast episode of it, about it, mentioning it, I think, a while ago. But 3 main points when it comes to what we're talking about in regards to relaxation, and then kind of linking it with our daily life, stress management, and manifesting better things in our life. And I'm just going to go over them. I don't know how much time I'm going to spend on them. Probably not that much. And then I'll open the floor to questions and commentary. Or, maybe I'll open the floor after each point briefly. So the first point I want to cover here is what we can do if we're interested in making manifesting easier for us, or in the very least, feeling more capable of manifesting what we want and inwardly feeling more relaxed. One thing we can do, the obvious way to do that, is to focus more on relaxation and make it more of a priority in our daily life. That's point number 1 of 3. Focus more on relaxation and make it more of a priority in your daily life. Earth-shattering, isn't it? So obvious. Yet, how many of us are doing it as much as we would like? If we're being honest, I bet you a lot of us, including myself, some of the time for sure, are not prioritizing relaxation enough. And again, when I say relaxation, I do not just mean like lying on the couch or, eating Cheetos and playing video games. That's fine, by the way. If eating Cheetos and playing video games helps you relax some of the time, you should do that. But that's not the only way to do it. When I say relaxation, what I mean is a feeling of like, I'm okay right now. Not even necessarily like I feel spectacular right now. I feel amazing. I feel like blissful ecstasy right now. Just like I'm okay right now. Like things are fine right now, right? And it's great if they're better than fine, if you feel good, if you feel very good. But if that seems too hard to attain right now in the moment or in the in the near future today, just like I'm okay right now. What are some things you can do that work for you to help you feel okay right now? Now, it's going to be different depending on your sensibilities, like I always talk about, because we have different sensibilities. But I pretty much guarantee you there are some things that you could do today that would help you feel better inwardly and feel more at peace and relaxed in the present moment. Doesn't mean that you're going to feel like $1 million. Doesn't mean that your life's going to be perfect for the rest of the day. Just means that you are going to be more relaxed than you would be if you didn't do these, whatever you choose to do. Now, there are so many things you could do, but you got to figure out what works for you. But some popular examples are like take a walk, some kind of meditation, taking a hot shower, right? Going on like a jog, right? Reading a book you like, maybe working out. That could be like more physical exertion, for instance. Dancing is an example of like movement in something physical, but it relaxes you inwardly, right? Maybe calling somebody who you like to talk to and you have good conversations with, right? Now, that's just a few examples of like 100 different examples I could give, but it's going to be highly subjective, the activities that inwardly make you feel okay and at peace in the present moment. And if you've had a crappy day, I understand it's not necessarily going to be easy to go from like, I'm super stressed out. I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at like a 9 or 10 and I'm stressed, all the way down to a 1. But doing activities that make you feel more present can help you for sure get down from like that 9 or 10 to like a 5 or a 6, or maybe even a 3 or 4. And in a lot of my work and like in my guides, like The Joy of Not Thinking, I talk about basically like exercises or like hacks you can use to really quickly get down from like that like 9 or 10 stress level down to like a 4 or 5, which again is a huge improvement. Everybody on this call knows this, I think. If you're like a 9 or 10, it can get down to a 4 or 5 in terms of stress. That's a massive improvement. And, again, it's going to depend on who you are for what works best for you. But some hacks that work well, I found for almost everybody is if you get physically active, if you move your body a lot and get playful or start screaming or yelling or get out of your like normal physical comfort zone, it's going to help you lower your stress level. Likewise, talking out loud to yourself in whatever way you see fit is going to help you probably lower your stress level. I've spoken about this a lot in many different places. You can, again, my guide, The Joy of Not Thinking, is a good summation of the general points I make there. But those are hacks to help you relax and feel more okay in the present moment. But you don't necessarily need hacks like that to do this. Even if you're stressed out, people will often find, for instance, like if they take like if they vigorously work out, like if they do like like weightlifting or like sprinting or like, a long run or something like that, they'll go down from like a 9 or 10 to like a 4 or 5, or maybe taking a cold shower, shocking the body, right? Or going in the car and going on the highway and blasting music you really like and driving. These are all different ways, and some might say unconventional ways, to inwardly relax. Now, you can be inwardly relaxed and be in situations that to other people would not make them feel relaxed. There's a lot of people, for instance, who have what would be called high pressure jobs where they're making a lot of decisions, like, doctors or lawyers or people in charge of, large organizations who have to make a lot of, quote unquote, pressure filled situations each day, but they manage to feel relatively inwardly relaxed while they're doing that, because they're used to it and they found the flow that works for them. So this is much more about finding your inner flow and your sense of relaxation as you go about your normal life, as opposed to trying to make relaxation this elusive thing, okay? It's not just a passive activity that you have to do, right? In order to feel more inwardly relaxed throughout the day or during your day, right? And again, passivity is fine. Taking a hot bath, right? Or just lying in bed, or doing yoga, like those more passive or like slow exercises. Not necessarily that yoga is always that passive, but more meditative exercises like that are fine, obviously, as well, to help you relax. But the point is, you can be doing, active exercises, or be interacting with a lot of people, or be in a boardroom or whatever, and still have a sense of inward peace while you're doing that kind of stuff. And this is not about being perfect. This is not about judging yourself harshly. Like, am I relaxed enough? This is just about paying more attention and making it more of a priority to feel more relaxed as you go through your day. And again, there's no set thing you have to do this. It's just watching yourself more and putting that priority on relaxation. If you want, for some people, it might help if at the end or beginning of each day, you kind of like grade yourself, like, how relaxed did I feel in general today or yesterday, if you do it in the morning? Like, was I very relaxed? Was I kind of relaxed? Was I just kind of neutral? Was I pretty tense, or was I very tense? You can grade yourself at the end of the day if you want to track it in such a manner, but you don't have to track it. The point of point one here is just put more of a priority on relaxation. By putting more of a priority on relaxation, it becomes more of our default choice as we move through our day, and we hopefully start feeling better in general more of the time because of doing that, and perhaps manifesting better things in our life, and finding it easier to utilize the manifestation, the more popular manifestation techniques and tools we hear about just by doing that. I would argue, big picture, that what I just described is a manifestation tool. If you just focus on feeling more relaxed throughout your day and know about these, various LOA principles, I think you'll see that your external reality starts to change positively as well. And a writer like Richard Dotz talks about that very well. You know what? I'm in a flow right now, and these are short points, so I'm just going to move right on to number 2 and 3, and then after we talk about the last 2 points, I'll open it up for discussion. So the first point here, like I said, was making relaxation a priority and more of our default. Another nice idea you can have is, like, you can have like a reminder on your phone, at the beginning of the day, like, I'm going to have a nice relaxing day, or I'm going to gently focus on being more relaxed and gentle with myself throughout the day, or word it however you like. Just something to remind yourself, or maybe have a reminder on your phone that goes off a couple times a day to remind yourself. And again, something like the grounding exercise we did at the beginning of this session can be very helpful to kind of have you, facilitate inner relaxation as you go through the day. You could do it shortly after you wake up, some kind of grounding exercise, perhaps in the middle of the day, and perhaps around bedtime. So point 2 here, let's tie this together with some of these more, I guess you could say, traditional manifesting ideas. You mentioned Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone earlier. They're relevant here for point 2. If we want to tie this whole relaxation thing. Oh, before I do that, actually, let me mention this. If you haven't already, and you're wondering more about like what I mean by just making relaxation your default, check out my short guide, The Relaxation Manifesto. The Relaxation Manifesto. I think I wrote that back in 2016. It's I don't know, 10, 15 pages long. It's free. It's on my website. I'll put a link in the description to this video on when it's on YouTube, the recording, the Relaxation Manifesto. Check that out if you have any questions. It's one of the best things I ever wrote. Very straightforward, talking about all those ideas that I just pointed out in this first pillar of this workshop on relaxation today, and tying it into manifesting. So the second pillar or point that ties it more into manifesting is, once we've made relaxation more of a priority in our default as we go through our day after day after day, we can start to ask ourselves, what do I want? What do I want? What do I really want in my life? What do I really want? If you're familiar with, if you've read my new book, Money Your Friend, you'll recognize this is very similar to the first habit I describe in that book, which is basically like writing a statement of like what you really want. And then, trying to connect to what that means for you. And then after you've done that, thinking about like an underlying ideal that ties together with that. So for instance, you might say like, well, I want a really, good, fulfilling, high paying job. And you really want it. That's a great thing to identify, right? And then you may connect with that and it feels good, right? And then you're like, what does that signify? Like, what's that ideal? And maybe that ideal for you is something like fulfillment or peace or satisfaction. And you can just kind of sink in those nice feelings. But this second pillar is really just so many different manifesting, teachers say the same thing. They say in Napoleon Hill is probably the most famous example of recent times, like, what do you want? What do you have a burning desire for? Like, what do you, if the pressure's off, right? If you're not like, oh, I can't do this. If you could have anything you wanted, for instance, like, what do you want? Like, what comes to mind? What do you want? I start thinking more about what you want, what you really want. Because so often what we really want is not the superficial thing we think we want. For instance, people often say, well, I want X amount of dollars. But the reason they want X amount of dollars is because they feel secure and safe with X amount of dollars. They don't actually want the money. They just want that security. If there was a way for them to have that security and that sense of safety without the money, they'd be fine without the money. While there are other people who really do want that amount of money and want to do something very specific with it, buy a house, finance a certain thing or what have you. So what do you want? What are some things you really want? That's a very important point, I think, for a lot of us to get real about, is to think more about what we really want. And to get more real about it, we can identify the underlying ideals of what that signifies for us. That's what I talked about in Money Your Friend. So often it's the same underlying ideal that we want. Like we might think we want a relationship, we want a better job, and we want a bigger house. But perhaps all of those things really signify the same underlying ideal, which is one of like love or peace. And it's like, well, if I get those things, I'll have love and peace. But the idea of so many of these, manifesting teachers is like, well, you already have the love and peace right now. If you relax and feel it, if you do really feel more relaxed and get still, you can feel that love and peace right now. You don't have to wait for the relationship or the job or the house to have it. So the second point or pillar, connecting a lot of these manifesting ideas with relaxation is thinking more about what you desire, what you want, and just getting clearer about it. And then the third point is to think about, I'm sure everybody here pretty much knows, probably at least a half dozen different manifesting techniques, right? Some out of the box, some more traditional. Third pillar here, kind of tying relaxation with manifesting. After we've decided to make relaxation more of our priority and default, and have decided to make that more of a daily practice, and after we've started thinking and actively considering and meditating upon what we really value most and want most in life. When I say want, it's also like, what do you value most in life, right? Getting deep with that. So once we've done those two things, we can then contemplate, if we want, what techniques out of the many manifesting techniques I know actually have worked for me. What manifesting techniques do I know that actually work for me? And maybe they worked for me before I even knew about manifesting techniques. See, for instance, for me, one of the things that works really well for me is becoming still and just kind of waiting. You know, H. Emily Cady says trustful passivity. And that's a manifesting technique, if you want to call it that works for me. But I basically did something like that before I ever knew about it. I ever knew it was a manifesting technique. And I still do it. And it's one of the few things that actually works for me in terms of implementing these ideas, these manifesting ideas, as does talking out loud to myself as like a manifesting tool. And also as just a tool to feel better and more relaxed because they're connected. But talking out loud is also something that I did before I knew about manifesting. I think I do it with maybe a little bit more confidence and direction now because I know more about these manifesting tools, but those are techniques that actually work for me. And I know many manifesting techniques, but I got to tell you, most of them do not really move the needle. So this is kind of this is an important point, this third pillar or point here, in the sense that you can be very well versed and very interested in different techniques and even use other techniques. Like I affirm sometimes and I write things in the journal and stuff like that. But the techniques I rely on are techniques I've used for a long time and that some people wouldn't even necessarily associate with manifesting. So you want to think honestly about what techniques have worked for you in the past in regards to helping you get what you want and making you feel better and more expectant and imaginatively certain that what you want is going to manifest in your reality. What techniques have helped you do that? And, you know, people can share some of the techniques that have worked for them if they want in the chat, or we'll talk about it when I'm done covering these 3 points. And again, if you can't think of anything, well, then you can just go back to point 1 and just focus on inner relaxation. You know? Because as I said, I really think if you just focus on being more inwardly relaxed and go through your day as that being more of your key thing you focus on, that's enough to create positive change. And if you're really at a loss and you're into these manifesting ideas, you could simply have like a goal list that you look at daily, or maybe even just write down once things you really want. Think about what you really want. And then once you've really contemplated what you really want, write it down. You can look at it daily, or you can just put it away and you can just focus on relaxing more as you go through your day, day after day, and make it more of your predominant mindset and see what happens. I bet you some of that stuff on your list will start showing up in your life in some way. So again, to go over 3 points, and then I'll open it up to conversation if we want to have a conversation about this. Number 1, make relaxation more of a priority and more of your what you want as your default. Now, everybody wants to be relaxed, right? What I'm talking about is really focusing on making more inward relaxation something that you truly are willing to work on and practice, feeling and getting more inwardly relaxed as you go through the day. Pillar 1 is the most important pillar. And again, if you look at my guide, the Relaxation Manifesto, that might clarify a few things about what I'm saying in regards to this first pillar or point. Point 2 is think deeply about what you really want or what you value in life and identify that more. Point 3 is thinking about techniques in, either traditional or untraditional manifest techniques that have actually worked for you and that you think can work for you now. And then utilizing them if you want alongside the first two pillars or points. And that's it. That's the basis. And that's the fundamental stuff that I wanted to share with you today. But yeah, in my experiences, relaxation, feeling more inwardly relaxed, moves the needle when a lot of these other manifesting tools don't move the needle. Even though people say great things about them, the truth of the matter from what I've seen is they don't work well for everybody by any means, while relaxation does seem to work well for the majority of people. All right, so yeah, if people have questions that they want to ask, they can ask them. Kate chimed in that she's got a mind map that she's a bit obsessive with, and that works for her, I think. That's great, mind maps. Sudesh asks, any technique that has helped you a lot? Thanks. Yes, absolutely. So first of all, if you go to my YouTube channel, I have a playlist there, and one of the playlists is seminars, and I've made several videos about the techniques that have helped me the most. But to briefly go over the techniques that have helped me the most, I mentioned them earlier. The techniques that have helped me the most over the years in regards to manifesting is simply becoming really still and trusting in God, basically the absolute method, you would call it. Just trusting in God and kind of assuming the best, being expectant of the best, kind of like a big picture law of assumption way. So like just relaxing in that, being very still in that, and waiting in trustful passivity, just vibing out in the moment. So that, and talking out loud to myself very openly, which changes my mood, my state, and makes it so I can believe more that what I want to happen is going to happen. So yeah, basically like vibing out the absolute method and talking out loud. Those are the techniques that have moved the needle for me the most, for sure. So yeah, we can share other techniques that have worked for people if people want, or we can just move on to general Q&A in regards to what I just spoke about, or also tie it together with Money Your Friend, my new book, if people want to have any questions about that, because I know some of you on this call have been doing the 30-day exercise in there. And as I mentioned, the first habit in that 30-day exercise involves really, contemplating and feeling what you want, which is something that we just mentioned here, and is an important, point that can help us get clear about what we desire, and then having what we desire actually show up more easily in our life. David asks, would you be so kind to share your take on the discrepancies between law of assumption and law of attraction? Yeah, David, I will share my opinion on that. Is there are no discrepancies. It's the same thing. And I've made videos about this before. I think there's zero difference. Did you talk about Byron Katie and Neville? I just got on the call, Beth asked. No, I did not. Beth, that last podcast episode was connecting Neville's advice with Byron Katie's advice. We can talk about that some if you want to clarify if there's anything you want to, elaborate on in terms of what you're wondering. That podcast episode, I think, pointed at a lot of things. But something that always appealed to me about Neville, and why I think I really why it clicked for me really quickly in terms of at least in my opinion, understanding, it felt like I understood what Neville was talking about really quickly, is because I had a lot of experience doing the 4 questions of Byron Katie, the work of Byron Katie. And the 4th question that Byron Katie always asks is, who would you be without the thought? And that's very similar to Neville of like, who would you be if your fulfillment was now here? If you walked in the state of the wish fulfilled, who would you be? Often if the negative thought, Byron Katie, usually it's like the negative thought, like, I don't want that person to be here, or like, I don't want to be, or like, I don't want to be poor anymore. And it's like, who would you be without that thought? And then Neville would be like, who would you be if you already were a multimillionaire? And it's like the same answer, at least for me, a lot of the time. I know Kate's on this call. You left a comment, something similar, right? Similar experience with that. Yeah. Got it. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very interesting. That connection. And it goes to show how teachers like Byron Katie, we can bring them into this law of attraction, law of assumption discussion pretty easily if we're open to it, if we don't look at it through just a very certain dogmatic way. That ties back into David, what you're saying. Yeah, for me, David, you can email me. I'll send you an episode I did specifically about the law of assumption versus the law of attraction and how there is no difference, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason that I started my podcast, Law of Attraction Explored, is because for me, so many of these teachings are pointing at basically the same thing. And it kind of upsets me how dogmatic and in the box people interpret like Neville's teachings as being like the law of assumption, and like Abraham Hicks is the law of attraction. And part of that's the teacher's fault, honestly. I mean, like if people didn't throw this law term around so much with such seriousness, I don't think people would be quite as dogmatic about it. But people throw the law word around, and it makes people believe. When you hear the law, you're like, oh, this is a law, I better believe, so it helps facilitate the manifestation, I guess you could say. But it does more harm than good in this online social media day and age, because people just really think in the box. And I will agree to disagree with people who think there are differences. But yeah, I think generally speaking, for most of us, it's a lot more holistic and helpful if we integrate these different quote unquote laws and realize they're pointing at the same thing within us most of the time, at least. And then we can integrate also teachers like Byron Katie and a lot of interesting non-dual and mystical and Zen teachers, what they're saying, and self-improvement teachers with the law of attraction, law of assumption teachers, and all come up with the same thing. My videos now in the car, I always say law of assumption as well as law of attraction. And the reason I do that is just because so many of the people watching my videos come from Neville and are coming from this online space where people say law of assumption. So I say it a lot there, but there's no difference as far as I'm concerned. Does anybody have any other questions about like the relaxation thing? It's fine if no one does. But I just want to make sure that stuff is clear. Where did the chat just go? Hold on one second. There it is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, hold on one second. All right, let's get this chat out of here. What happened here? This is crazy, dude. All right, so sorry, we started messing with the chat. So yeah, do people have anything else to say? People are quiet. I can keep on talking. Kate, do you have a question or no? Were you just raising your hand?
I was just going to kind of elaborate on what I said about the mind map.
Great.
And so basically I created this mind map, and because I was trying to kind of like reverse engineer like techniques, and that's how I got a little bit obsessive, and it's hard to kind of really boil it down right to one thing, because there's instances where something happened where I had just imagined it once, and then the scene played out, and including times before I even knew anything about manifestation.
Right.
And then other times when I, like, for instance, one thing recently where I was kind of in like an urgent situation where I really needed something to happen, and I was just saying, everything is always working out for me, like, to myself over and over again, kind of forcefully, and it turned the situation around within like a few minutes. And so those examples are kind of like almost opposites, but I feel like just the practice of of writing these things down is kind of like reinforcing your kind of the power of your imagination. Because I think it's not even necessarily about the techniques. It's all just comes down to kind of you know, in your awareness center.
Yeah. And the more you can confirm that, like,
Exactly.
that it's
Yeah.
working. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I like that. And you know, you've been at this stuff for a while. And I think when when you're like out of the newbie phase and like you've experimented with different techniques and you've seen it work and not work, I think you get more confident. And again, this is about confirming and writing a reason to write it down and to like kind of note to yourself almost like what has worked and what can work. You become comfortable doing various things that are seemingly like at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Because like I too have done like I've utilized, like I said, I utilize affirmations sometimes. Like I don't really like just rote affirmations that much because I get bored a lot of the time, but I see a place for them. But I've also used basically robotic affirmations or affirming something over and over and over again when I've been in very trying situations, you know what I'm saying? And seen success by doing that. But when I just do it, and there's nothing like pressing. Sometimes it's comforting, but a lot of times I just get bored of it after like a few days of, for instance, robotically affirming something for 10 or 20 minutes a day. If there's nothing pressing about it, I often find myself getting bored and kind of going to that second pillar. It's like, but what do I really want here? Or like, what am I really trying to, you know, achieve? And often it's like, well, the underlying ideal that I really want, like usually for me, honestly, it's like peace, like a sense of peace and fulfillment. It's like, well, I can get that just by relaxing right now. And I don't need to be affirming to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm in a high pressure situation, like I give that example, like when my daughter was born and, you know, my wife was in labor and it was like a long labor. And I was like affirming, I was almost like trying to, you know, like ride the wild horse, like Coué talks about, like, like by just saying, like, everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. I was really glad to be able to direct my mind by like basically forcefully affirming in that stage. And again, that's very different than my usually rather passive, I'm just going to vibe out and accept the present moment and like expect good will happen by being very trustful but passive. I think you're comfortable doing both ends of that spectrum, as am I.
Sure.
And that just comes with experience. And the more we can confirm that both sides work and for us and that there's not one set way, the more comfortable we are, because there's going to be all these people online that say, well, you have to do it this way or whatever. And like when you hear Cater Eye saying, well, we do both extremes, maybe that's not you. Maybe there's just one certain technique or one certain way, but finding what subjectively works for you in terms of techniques and working with that, as opposed to just being like, well, I saw this person on YouTube, they seem to be having a lot of success doing this technique and it not working for you, but you thinking you're doing something wrong because it worked for them. Don't do that. Like just, you know, if you want, take notes or track yourself what does tend to work for you and think about, again, like, yeah, what was basically working for you before you even knew about this stuff? You know, because often that's a hint and often there's an LOA technique that complements that.
Mm-hmm. For
Like,
sure.
you know, like I always utilize talking out loud as a stress management tool. But I was like, oh, I can utilize this more as a stress management tool and talk about what I want in my life or how it's coming, how it's inevitably going to come by talking out loud. I can do that too. So it's like I augmented a tool that was already a positive tool for me and made it better, as opposed to be like, all right, Tim, now you're going to do like free form journaling. I hate free form journal. I never free form journal. You know what I mean? And that wouldn't be that's not a good manifesting tool for me. For somebody else on this call, that might be your ideal tool, might be the thing that works best for you. So yeah, trust yourself. Thanks, Kate, for that comment. Yeah, Beth, go right ahead.
What about when you say free form journaling, are you talking about scripting?
I can be. I mean, I've never done free form journaling for manifesting stuff. I've done it a few times. Like, you know how there's some manifesting teachers supposed to be like, write out everything you want, just free form, like just go with the flow. I've done that once or twice in my 10 years or so of knowing about LOA, but it's nothing I would do regularly. Scripting, in my eyes is a little bit different, I think, but like I've never been a big scripting person either. My experience with scripting is like that Royce Christensen book, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. You know, Royce, he's got that famous book on scripting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that book. I thought it was very interesting. To me, personally, that's a little bit different than it's like some people just want to, you know, let loose on the page. I don't do that. If I'm letting loose, I'm more likely to let loose in that way by talking out loud. Like the verbal component helps me more than the writing component. And it might be the opposite for somebody else, you know, it might be the inverse or whatever.
Yeah, there's something about hearing your own voice that's powerful. I like the scripting. It's just, you have to be in the mood for it. You know what I mean? So it's whatever gets you into that feeling state. So.
Right. And I mean, that's, again, I guess what we're kind of circling back to is like the idea of like why prioritizing relaxation, I think, is so important for a lot of us, is because relaxation is a feeling. It's not like saying I am relaxed or writing I am relaxed. It's like you actually like want to feel relaxed in the present moment. And like what we're talking about here a little bit, it's like, well, you can feel relaxed even though like your mind is all over the place and physically you don't feel great. You can still kind of harness that relaxation some way, but the feeling is what we're going for. And if you do a technique night after night and you aren't getting that feeling, it's not necessary to do the technique necessarily, because you're not doing it for you don't want to do the technique for the sake of the technique. Usually you want to do it to get the feeling, like you just said. And so you might have to mix it up and change it up some. And that's, again, why I always try to come back to relaxation. Finding a way to feel inwardly relaxed helps me. And I think it will help most of you on the call. Quiet crew today. Kate, you're right. Scripting is more structured. Yeah, I mean, scripting is, sorry, what am I doing with this crazy chat box? Scripting is more structured, I guess. Do you want to expand upon that at all? Your thoughts on that, on why scripting is more structured?
Oh, I was just going to say, well, it's like if you write, my understanding of it is just like if you write like a screenplay, right? It's like a script. Like you write it down and then it kind of stays that way. Like it doesn't really change and it has like a very specific kind of narrative flow to it. Whereas free form is kind of what it sounds like. It's just more free.
Yes. Yeah. And usually longer, perhaps,
Exactly.
less refined. Yeah, totally. Jazz Purveyor, yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's totally cool just to listen. I don't mean to be borrowing people to ask me questions. It's totally fine. It's just what often happens on these calls is that people at the end all of a sudden speak up, and we don't have to wait for that. All the formality can go out the window as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts that they want to share?
Yeah, Tim, I was thinking about the Emile Coué. It's passing. And initially when I was doing it, I always thought of the short haul as opposed to the long haul. And I did, like a headache, stuff like that. And I did find it helpful. But then as time went on, I found with like bigger things like a bad ankle, a sore neck, which were more sort of longer term, maybe more of like an injury, that I did the really intense It's Passing. And I was thinking after like a 5-minute, really throwing everything at it, like the machine gun fire. And I found directly afterwards, there wasn't that much of a difference, except the belief that it would be sorted out. And then what I found is that the answers came to how to sort it out. So most recently, my neck, which has been sore for a long time, I found that in doing meditations, I suddenly started hanging my head in a way I never have before, that I found really relaxing. So that it was completely relaxed and pulling. on the whole of the back of my neck, all of the tendons, and it started healing and I can feel it. And then I read somewhere Emile Coué saying to his patients, you may not leave here with it fixed today, whereas most people were impressed because it was immediate. Sometimes you won't leave here with it fixed. It will be a matter of time and you have to keep at it. And so what seems to happen is the answers come about what to do. If you do it and then believe that it is working. So to hang your head in a particular way, or it might be a particular cream or something. It's like, oh, I need that. And then suddenly the thing has passed. So I think that's what I found with that technique. And the more that it happens, the more I believe it. So the more it seems I trust my intuition. Once I've started the process, I will know what to do.
Makes complete sense.
So it's not that I would say, oh, I wouldn't go to the doctor. It's not that. Obviously it's something needed.
Right.
But it seems to be helping with intuition, as long as I trust that the process has started and it will continue.
Yes. Thank you, Kate H. The Kate's really giving some great comments here. Thank you, Kate H. And thank you, Kate F. for your earlier comments. Yeah, I mean, that's, again, so what you just described, Kate, so subjective. Again, it's not like it's like, oh, you hear the technique and I'm just going to do that and that's it. I mean, that's great. Listen, that can happen for sure.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if you're into this stuff long term, you got to find what works for you. You know what I'm saying? And that's, again, that involves experimenting and reflecting, you know, what's working for me, what could work. And yeah, I mean, what's interesting about something like robotic affirmations or affirming something when you don't necessarily feel it is if you have the belief while you're saying it that something is going to happen even though you don't feel any change, it does often, it seems like, lead you to some insight or whatever, which can be a catalyst for the positive change you want. And yeah, that's, I mean, what I always find fascinating about Coué, for those of you on the call who don't know, you know, Coué is my favorite teacher, but he also is my favorite manifesting teacher. He's also the only law of attraction type of, or I don't even want to say that term, manifesting teacher, you know, self-healing type teacher that I read consistently and have for years, because I find there's so much nuance in what he says. What he says is obviously very simple, but the more you read it, at least for me, the more nuances you pick up on. Truly a genius teacher, but he really did. It was great when people were cured the first time they came, but the whole idea of better and better is like, and you know, his general like induction, we've got that somewhere on the, you know, on the Coué videos. His law and induction, where he'd be making general suggestions. A lot of it was like, you know, you might feel it now, but it's improving. And, you know, and so he really encouraged people, if they didn't feel totally fine at the end, to come back a couple times, or to, you know, you want it to be really embedded in you. That's the whole idea. So from what I, you know, read and can remember, for a lot of cases for Coué, I actually think the majority were not like the healing was not the first time. There were a significant percentage where they were healed the first time, you know, of each, I don't know how many people he'd have, I forget off the top of my head, you know, between like probably 15 and 30 people at his per sitting, and then he'd have a couple sittings a day or whatever. But of like, let's say those 30 people, maybe a handful would have, if they had a significant ailment, would feel no pain and feel like they're totally cured right afterwards. But I think it was more like the majority would be like, oh yeah, there's some improvement, some change. And Coué would be like, well, come back a few times until it's fully gone, basically. And again, that's the idea of like getting better and better, is that you're gradually improving. You know, a criticism we can make of Coué is that people would self-heal themselves, whether it was after one sitting or after a couple sittings, and then like not stay with it, not persist with it, and then they would have more ailments down the road and not do what basically Coué instructed them to do to heal those ailments. And one of the papers, I think, in the United States, when he came to the United States, when Coué came to the United States, followed up on a lot of people that saw Coué and found that a significant percentage of the people who had been cured were back in the same condition 7 or 8 months later, because they hadn't followed up with what he was saying, which is like, and again, Coué is my favorite guy talking about this of anybody, and he had higher success rates than anybody I know. But this just goes to show the deeper point that, like, if we're serious about implementing and integrating this stuff in our life in like a sustainable way, we have to subjectively understand and believe it. And that's a process, and that's like basically like self-work that you'll be doing for the rest of your life. And hopefully it will be fulfilling self-work, but it's not like I have this one technique now and that's it. All the great teachers are basically like, this is a daily, this is like a daily way of living, basically. And it's not a special technique. It's much more about trust and having more faith in your imagination. And again, that links with being able to relax into the present moment and having more faith in yourself and your imaginative capabilities, your healing capabilities, your capabilities to to feel fulfilled. So yeah. Kate F said, yes, it's like the bridge in a way. Yep. It is like the bridge of incidents, or whatever we want to, whatever bridge metaphor we want to use. Great. All right. Anyone else have any final comments they want to share? Here's a question here. What does everyone think about the role of effort and manifestation? Neville talks about inspired action arising from a state which feels to me like a passive receptive signal prior to assertion. I've also heard effort referred to as a way to outwardly signal your preference, acting as if in different words. But if I'm not aligned, inspired, can this can feel like need or have to or powering through? Where do all of you think the balance is between alignment, inner feeling, and action, outer doing, passivity, and assertion? Oh wow, that's a big question. So I've made a lot of videos about the role of action. I don't mean to be flippant here. That question is just so big, and there's a lot of different interpretations and opinions that people probably would share if we really open it up. People are welcome to chime in on the chat, or if they have anything profound to say about it. I would say, Jasper Veyer, something I wrote about it is relax more, try less. I think that action, if you wait to take inspired action a lot of the time, you're going to be waiting for a while. That's a big problem in the online space that I see when it comes to people into the law of assumption. But it's a fine line between taking forceful action, doing, and then not doing much of anything, and taking the appropriate amount of action. And I don't have one set answer for you. Like I said, there are many. If you go to my Neville playlist on my YouTube channel, there's many videos where like actions in the title, and I talk about taking action. The general point I will make, as I just said, is what I've seen is a lot of people who are into the law of assumption, Neville's teachings, do not take enough action. They are lost in their head, and they actually are feeling lackful and are not aware of that, and it keeps them stuck. And I see a lot of people who are very successful, like in the business world, in the entrepreneurial world, that take a lot of forceful action that might kind of power through lack and get stuff done. I personally am a very passive person a lot of the time, but the truth of the matter is you're going to have to do stuff. At least most of us are. in your, you know, physical world, moving through the day to get things done. And if you don't, I don't know. I just, to get into that flow state where you're only taking inspired action, it sounds great on paper, but I just, in reality, it's not so cut and dry. Everything gets really murky. And I'm really hesitant when people say, you know, wait to take inspired action, because then I just, you know, you check in with them 6 months later and they haven't done anything. I see that all the, I shouldn't say I see that all the time, but like when I was moderating like the Neville subreddit, I was like, man, people here are not moving. They're not, they're in their head, and they're not taking a lot of times, like you take a step, you have a vision, and you take a step and it's the wrong step, but you course correct. And you can course correct and fail your way to success. You know, I mean, Maxwell Maltz talks about this a lot, and some other good LOA teachers, like, and that idea of like course correcting is absent, in my opinion, in like a lot of this hyped up law of assumption stuff we see online. So that's my short spiel on it. Kate H said, I think action is essential, but without obsessing on the outcome, so that the action is enjoyable and part of everyday life. Yeah, it's a great answer. I mean, and again, we can link it back to relaxation. You know, one reason we're talking so much about relaxation is because you can be very active and be taking action and still go with inward flow, still feel okay inwardly. And when you feel not okay, you can be aware of that and then do your best to get back in flow. This is not about being perfect at all. It is a little bit about getting better and better every day in every way, getting more and more relaxed, getting better and better inwardly. So I hope that helps. And I you know, there are a lot of videos on my playlist talking about action and the Neville playlist. All right. Yeah. If people have follow-up questions or would like, you know, a consultation with me or anything like that, you can contact me on my website, radicalcounselor.com. But yeah, this is, I wanted to give kind of this overview of some of the main underlying points that I think are important when it comes to this manifesting stuff that just aren't spoken about that much. And the number one thing is focusing on relaxation, and focusing less a lot of time on a specific thing you want to manifest, and more on, do I feel relaxed and okay about how my life is right now? If you feel okay and relaxed about where you are right now and expectant of future positive change, you're in a good place, in my opinion. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time, enjoy.